was it in order for restoration? Was Joseph trying to restore the bad behaviors of his brother? I hate this concept of, has anyone ever heard of snitches get stitches? You've heard that before. You know, you're not supposed to snitch on each other, but in reality, if you love somebody, you would. This is a childish type of concept, a violent type of concept that we're not to snitch on each other. But if you love each other, please do it in love. Try to help one another. Young people, please. It's good to tell somebody if someone is doing wrong so that we can help one another in a loving way. And so Joseph is trying to restore the bad acts of his brothers, but in turn they tend to hate him even more. The Bible says, of children will be the kingdom of heaven, says Jesus. Unless you be like a little child, says Jesus. Now, as you guys know, I have a 2-year-old daughter, and I have learned so much from her. If you just pay attention to a child, you can learn so much from them of what it means to be a child of God. So much, so much. Sadly, some parents corrupt children. And that's a sad reality. And I hate to say it, but it has to be said. Sometimes parents can corrupt children. And what I mean by that is, you know, I've seen my daughter and just her upbringing and how she behaves and how loving and trusting she is. And I remember this one time, somebody inside, I was a bit angry. I said, all right, I don't know what to do in this situation, but somebody scared my daughter. You know, some adults like to scare children. I don't know why they do that, but anyways, scared my daughter. And I just saw the fear in her eyes. And now she has this learned behavior of there are dangers out in the world. You see what I'm getting? Sometimes we corrupt the parents do, but rather life hits hard sometimes. And it can be very difficult for children and their upbringing. Again, children are smarter than we give them. And so all these things in life shape children. If I can fix their youth rebellion, but I can't do what they've been doing for 16 years, but the parents have been teaching them for 16 years with just one prayer, if that makes sense. Now, I'm going to try, and I'm going to keep praying, but it's a partnership. As in, the first home, the first church has to be the home. Parents have to educate and train their children in the way of the Lord. Proverbs 22:6, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. It's a pretty powerful promise. Powerful promise. And so my challenge would be, read. Read. As parents, show your children how to study, how to have a relationship with God, not just through actions, as in through showing them, but also through your own personal examples as well. My advice would be read Child Guidance, or Ministry of Healing, or Messages to Young People. Read those type of books that can help you and I learn how to be the best parents that we can be. Now, I'm not trying to bash anybody. I'm learning myself too. Believe me, I'm trying to learn how to get through these terrible twos, as they call them. I'm trying to figure that out myself. But we have to be willing to go to God and allow Him to be the one who trains us and shows us. But here's another thing. We also have to be willing to discipline our children. If you guys remember the sons of Eli, we have Samuel and the sons of Eli. The sons of Eli, their father was not willing to discipline the children. And because of that, they did whatever they wanted. And they defiled God in His own home, in His own sanctuary. We as parents, too, have to be willing to discipline our children as well. And as looking at this story, I don't know, nor can I see, if Jacob correctly was able to discipline his children. And you can see the tension there. You can see the battles between the children, the rivalries between the boys, and also the favoritism that went on. And we see that throughout the life of Joseph. All of that leading up to the difficult time. So as of right now, Joseph, his life has been good. It has been comfortable, if you will. It has been great. But then Joseph is now being sold as a slave to Egypt. Have you ever noticed that life can change in just a split second? Your entire life can change with one phone call. Just one phone. I'm almost afraid to answer the phone sometimes because I'm like, who's next? What happened next? What happened now? It's scary. It's scary. And life can change in an instant. And for Joseph, he was so comfortable where he was before. He was the favorite. He had the clothing. He had, I'm assuming, a good sleeping arrangement. And now he is a slave in Egypt. Everything changed in a split second for Joseph. Everything changed. And the reality is we can't get too comfortable with the good life, if you will. Satan likes to keep us comfortable. We can't get too comfortable with this good life. If you notice the message to the 7 churches, have you noticed how they transitioned from the historical periods? The second church, Smyrna, was persecuted. But did you notice that if you read the whole section, there are no complaints to that church? It's the only church that has no complaints. That one in Philadelphia. The only two churches that have no complaints, because those are the only two churches there, but those are the main two churches that are being persecuted. Well, watch this. 7. What's the 7th church? I see our historical period right now. That's the only one that has no compliments. The other ones have all compliments. This is the only one that has no compliments. Wow. So the one that had no complaints was the one that was being persecuted. The one that had no compliments was the one that was too comfortable, lukewarm. And the one that falls asleep in church. The one that doesn't come to pray. Ooh, my bad. The one that isn't fully in or isn't fully out. It's just kind of like, we ever felt that way? That's the Laodicean church. And sadly, that's the church that we're in right now. And that's the one that had no compliments. However, there is still hope because Jesus says he's at the door. And so, but if you notice, there's a danger in being too comfortable. Joseph was comfortable, and now life changed in a split second. And if we are not grounded in truth, we will allow ourselves to be swayed to and fro whenever we enter the difficult times. But let's ask the question, did that happen to Joseph? That's what we're going to look at in a little bit. But first, I want to talk about another thing. Not only does life change in a split second for Joseph, but also, can you imagine the trauma that he now has? Keep in mind, he's 17 years old when this happens. The trauma that he now has. I was reading a book called Anatomy of the Soul by Kurt Thompson. And in it, he makes the argument that sometimes when you're speaking to people, you're not necessarily speaking to them, but you're speaking to their traumas. And this is what I mean by that. I had an elder one time that was always complaining why he wasn't included in every single thing. Not just in some things, in everything. Every little thing he wanted to know about it. And I was just like, man, what's going on? Like, why does he want to know everything? And so I kind of sat down and talked with him, and then I found out that he was abandoned as a child by his father. And that's when I realized the reason why he wants to know everything, and the reason why he's so angry with me when I don't include him in everything, is because he was abandoned as a child, and when he doesn't know something, he feels as though he's being abandoned again. Sometimes we just assume that a person is just an evil person from the day they were born. But again, keep in mind how children are developed by their environments, by their upbringing, by their origin story, by everything that they go through. They become who they become because of their environments, because of their parents, because of how they grew up. And Joseph now had this excuse. Have you ever heard somebody say, I am the way that I am, and there's no changing? For those of you who are with family this week, I know I had that experience. I went back home and I was talking to someone I won't mention, and they gave me the excuse. I am the way that I am, and no changing. And I was like, you can still change. Because Jesus transforms. Jesus can transform your life and change you. And so, yes, we cannot use our traumas as an excuse. Yes, they are there. Yes, they are real. Yes, they hurt. Yes, there is need for healing, but they cannot be an excuse because Jesus can overcome anything and Jesus can transform. The moment you choose to follow Jesus, you must begin to change and keep changing more into his likeness and into his image. Now, young people, in life, you will have many experiences that will shape your character, who you are. However, Do not let them define your identity. There was a parable or something. There was a dad and two sons. The dad was an alcoholic, and he had two sons. One became an alcoholic, one became a CEO. And so they interviewed both sons, and they asked the alcoholic, "Hey, why did you become an alcoholic?" "Because I looked at my dad." And the CEO said, "Why did you become a CEO?" "Because I looked at my dad." We cannot use our excuses, our trauma, as an excuse not to move forward in life with God. Yes, both had the trauma, but it's a matter of what they did with it. It's a matter of whether they said, "Well, that's all the best that I can do," or whether I don't want to be like that. And so Joseph, let's look at his life. Let's look at what happened. He could have easily gave in to the attractions of Egypt. He could have easily curled up into a ball and said, I can't take this anymore. I'm just going to surrender my all to the Egypt and everything around him. But what did he do? Let's go to verses 39, chapter 39. Genesis 39, verses 2 through 5. Joseph is now in Egypt. And verse 2 says, "The Lord was with Joseph, and he was a successful man, and he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. And his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all he did to prosper in his hand. So Joseph found favor in his sight and served him. Then he made him overseer of his house, and all that he had he put under his authority. So it was, from the time that he had made him overseer of his house, and all that he had, that the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. And the blessing of the Lord was on all that he had in the house and in the field." Joseph was successful in Egypt. My question is, why was he so successful? What made him so successful? Was it his intellect? Was it his persuasion? What made Joseph so successful? Was it his membership? Was it his Christianity? Was it his parents? What made Joseph so successful? Dare I say, it was because of his faithfulness to God. James 4:8 says, "Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you." Joseph drew nearer and nearer and nearer to God, and he depended on God, and that's the reason why he was so successful. For those of you who are no longer living with your parents, many of us, when you transition to a college period, or to a 18-year-old or 21, whenever you choose to move out, do you remember the first thing that you did when you moved out? I remember after you packed up and everything and you settled in or whatever, the first decision that I made as a grown adult out of my own house, I was 21 years old, and I said, I'm going to go out to eat, and I don't have to tell anybody where I'm going. That was the first decision I ever made, and it felt great. I didn't have to let my mom know, hey, I'm going to be out for a while, and I'll be back at this time. No, I just went, because I now had that liberty to. And that was fun. It felt kind of weird at first, but it was pretty fun. I could choose my own restaurant. I did whatever I wanted. I could hang out with my friends or whatever. And I didn't have to check back in at home or let someone know, hey, I'm home. But then the week started to end. And the Sabbath started to come. And then the big question came. Will I still go to church or not? My parents aren't watching me anymore. I can choose to go or not. It's up to me. Will I still go to church? I think that's the scary part of parents. I'm not even close to there yet, but for those of you who have children, yes, that when they leave the house, will they still be faithful to God? Were they just doing it for us? Or will they continue on? What's going to happen? And Joseph is now by himself. He's out of the house. Sadly, forcibly, he's out of the house. And he now makes the decision. Do I remain faithful to God, or do I give in to all that Egypt has to offer? What do I do? Patriarchs and Prophets, page 214 says about Joseph. The worship of false gods was surrounded by all the pomp of royalty, supported by the wealth and culture of the most highly civilized nation then in existence. So it was nice. It was pretty good. Yet Joseph preserved his simplicity and his fidelity to God. And this is the most shocking part. The sights and sounds of vice were all about him, but he was as one who saw and heard not. His thoughts were not permitted to linger upon forbidden subjects. Not only did he remain faithful to his actions and his outward appearance, but even his mind didn't sin. It didn't linger on the thoughts and then what was going on in all of Egypt. That's amazing. Not even his mind thought evil things as he was surrounded by it. He could have gave in easily. And the reality is, young people, when we leave our homes, when we are out in the world, when we get our own place, when we raise our own families, when they gave me my daughter, I wanted to stay longer in the hospital. I was like, you're letting me go out for 2 days? Like, that's crazy. I need more time. I'm afraid. What do I do with this? How do I raise this little child? You have the liberty to do whatever you want. With great power comes great responsibility. It's scary. It's very scary. But the question is, do you remain faithful to God? That's what Joseph had to ask himself here. And he remained faithful to God, not just in actions, but in thoughts. But now my question is, how? How did his mind not even dwell on evil thoughts? How was that possible? A 17-year-old boy that can do whatever he wants. Obviously a slave, but he's in Egypt. He's in Egypt. His mind can linger. His thoughts can linger. He can do all these things. Deuteronomy 6:7. You shall teach them diligently to your children, referring to God's law. And you shall talk of them when you sit in your house. Watch the pattern of this. When you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, when you rise. Joseph was able to remain faithful to the Lord because he was raised by God. His father made many mistakes, but a good thing that he did was he taught Joseph in the way of the Lord. And I think that that's very important. I've said this many times, and I will continue to say it again. If you miss any of my sermons, just know that in every sermon that I preach, I will emphasize this. Read your Bibles daily. Pray daily. Get involved in some sort of ministry of witnessing daily. That's the emphasis that I want to give. And Joseph had this. And that's why he was able to remain faithful. He had a father who prayed with him, taught him, made many mistakes, favored him, obviously, and that caused rivalry, but he still had the word of God in him. And that made all the difference. When the troubling times came, remember your Creator in the days of your youth, so that when the evil days come, and the years draw near to which you say, I have no content. Remember your Creators in the days of your youth. But going back to that model family, again, I was in Houston for the week, and I was hanging out with family and friends, and I was talking to a friend of mine, and she asked me, because she recently had a baby. Her baby is 5 months old. And so it's kind of, when you have a baby, you rethink your life. So now it's no longer about me. It's about the baby. I mean, now I want to do everything I can for the baby. And she was just telling me, I don't know how to have a devotion. That's what she told me. And she said, my mom didn't show me very well how to do it. Therefore, I never learned how to really have a devotional life. But I want to know so that I can teach my daughter how to have a devotion. And if you were never taught how to have a devotional life or how to have a relationship with Jesus, I do want to share that for you real quick, going back to the three things that I mentioned. The first one is prayer. What I will say about this is, there's a saying that goes out that a lot of people pray the be prayers. Be with me, be with them, be with us. Be, the be prayers. My suggestion would be specific. Be with them. In what way? Be specific with the Lord in your prayers. That would be my advice as far as having a prayer life. It doesn't have to look perfect and extravagant. It doesn't have to be long. Just be specific and be consistent. Again, 3 times. Consistent. Nothing was changing that. Not even a law was changing his prayer life. He was faithful to God in his prayer life. So my advice would be specific on what you're praying about and be consistent. Set an alarm. Set a specific date and time every single day. Be specific and be consistent. That's the first one on prayer life. Bible study. I remember when I first started my Bible study. Have you ever felt like when you're reading a book, you want to get to the end already?